Hey guys, welcome to this tutorial on how to plan your answer. This video is under the preparation portion, which is planning your answer. The aim of this video is for you to understand what changes and stays the same in the questions when you enter your exam. Planning is important because it allows you to adapt to any question they give you instead of relying on a rote-learned essay. So by the end of this, our goal is to plan the structure of your answer and adapt it to the question during the exam. The tutorial will be divided into 3 parts: going through past exam questions, planning your answer, and the structure of your answer. So here are the past exam questions from the previous 3 years. We can now go through them and see which aspects change and which stay the same. So here we can see that all 3 asks for causes as well as consequences. Therefore, no matter what question you get, they will always ask you to write about causes and consequences, which is to be expected since this standard is about examining causes and consequences. But there are aspects between the questions which are different. For 2017, it asks for positive and negative consequences. In 2016, it asks for long-term and short-term causes, and for 2015, it asks for short-term and long-term consequences. With this, we can then see that the concepts of the causes and consequences are the ones which change per year. So it's important to prepare for this beforehand in case this year's question covers any of these points. With this in mind, here is a checklist you can use to see whether you have everything you need before going in. This is based on what we saw from the past questions before. These are the significance of the event, a short-term cause, a long-term cause, which we both saw from the 2016 paper, a long-term consequence, a short-term consequence, which were both from the 2015 paper, and for 2017, for the consequences, ensure that one of them is a positive consequence and the other negative. It doesn't matter which concepts you combine together, just ensure you are prepared for them. I'll show you what I mean soon. Alright, so now let's go through this checklist using my example of the civil rights movement. If you're wondering how I found all this information, just watch the previous video on how to research your historical event. Alright, so I can tick off the significance of the event because in summary it is significant to the African Americans as they gained their rights for freedom from racial segregation. I also have a short-term cause, which is the Montgomery bus boycott, and a long-term cause, which is the Brown versus Board of Education. Although the cause happened almost at the same time as the boycott, it is a long-term cause because it started earlier. Also, it is the first to be fueled by the long-term factor of segregation. My long-term cause involves the legislations enacted due to the movement, which are the Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, and Fair Housing Act. This is also my positive consequence. My short-term cause involves the Watts riots, which is also a negative consequence. So when planning your answer in the day, allow your first 5 minutes to be purely for planning. To do this, you can use the planning page of your exam booklet. This is always adapted to the question, therefore it changes every year. I'll show you examples of this later on. You may think that this is using up your writing time for your essay, but trust me, it is very handy to do because you can write down all the ideas you prepared beforehand and can then structure them to adapt to the question. If you didn't plan, you may find that when writing your essay, you could leave in a tangent or your essay structure could be messy. Therefore, these 5 minutes will be worth your time. This is what the planning page looked like for 2017. As you can see, you can jot down notes for your general details of your event here and your causes here, plus a space for evidence, which is for writing down all the information you've memorized beforehand. There are times when you have mind blanks in the exam. If you write these down before your essay, it will then ensure that you won't forget evidence in the middle of your writing because you've already written it down in this page. So here, it has space for positive and negative consequences, which were in the question. This is also helpful because you can jot down notes in the evidence boxes which can support your argument that your consequence is either positive or negative, especially for the higher marks. Every year this page can change, so the one that you could get this year could be completely different. However, they should be laid out based on the question you're given. Here is the 2016 planning page. As you can see, it is similar to the 2017 page, except it has space for long-term and short-term causes instead of the consequences. Same with the 2015 page, except it has the short-term and long-term consequences here. Alright, now let's briefly go through the basic structure of your essay, which you can follow in the exam. Start with the introduction, then the long-term cause, then the short-term cause, moving on to the short-term consequence, then the long-term consequence, then finally your conclusion. For the consequences, if ever they ask for positive or negative consequences instead, Still follow this layout, writing the consequence which happened first and then the other one. If you follow this structure, it ensures that you are writing in a chronological order. So here is an example using the Civil Rights Movement. Starting again with the introduction, then the Brown versus Board of Education, then the Montgomery bus boycott, then the Watts riots, then the legislations, and then finally the conclusion, reiterating again the riots were negative and the legislations were positive, just in case they ask for positive and negative consequences instead of the long-term and short-term. So what do you need to know from this tutorial? You need to understand that every year the question changes, so it is crucial to prepare for this prior to the exam. However, there are aspects which stay the same, which are having to write causes and consequences. It's also important to use the planning page because it helps as memory aid if you dump all you know onto it before you start writing. It also helps you to structure your essay to adapt to the question at hand. We also went through the general essay structure you can follow to ensure you are writing in chronological order. So that's it for today's tutorial on how to plan your essay. Thank you for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next video.